I'm Michelle Poland. I've nominated John MacLellan for the Global Teacher Prize. I've been a senior biology and chemistry teacher for 31 years. I've taught in 3 different cities in the area of Canada in which I live. I've taught in Italy, and I've observed teachers at an international school in Belgium. I'm going to speak to 4 criteria of the Global Teacher Prize today. The first one I'd like to address is innovative and effective instructional practices. About 12 years ago, John began to develop a series of magnetic model pieces. I have some of those magnetic model pieces on the blackboard in my room. What you'll notice, or what some people first think when they see the magnetic model pieces, is that it presents a nice picture. But truly, they're not just a picture at all. Each one of the magnetic model pieces moves, and I know that you're going to become familiar with them. Perhaps you have already in the dossier that you've read that's been prepared and in other video testimonials. So you will have learned in the other video testimonials the nuances and the intricacies of the actual model pieces. John developed the model pieces out of a constant quest to allow the processes that occur in a cell that are very challenging for students to understand, for those processes to be easily understood by students. The beauty of the model pieces is that they can be used for students from age 11 years old all the way up to senior biology students around 18 years of age. Okay. This innovation truly transformed the way that biology can be taught and that students can learn biology. The model pieces are both replicable. They can be used by any teacher in any classroom. In fact, when John was presenting the model pieces during a science conference, teachers became so excited and wanted to know where they could actually obtain the model pieces that John began a company that actually creates the model pieces for teachers to purchase. And so I know that these model pieces are used all over the world now in many teachers' classrooms. The second criteria that I'd like to speak to is achieving demonstrable student learning outcomes. The magnetic model pieces that John developed and his magnetic classroom truly improve student learning. I've taught many lessons before John developed the model pieces, and the same lesson without and with the model pieces, the engagement and focus of the students and the learning that goes on is like night and day teaching with the model pieces compared to having taught without them. I can tell students are learning and that student achievement is improving by the look on students' faces when I'm teaching with the model pieces. They're focused, they're engaged. The type of questions that students ask when they're taught with the model pieces dramatically changes and improves. They somehow, because they can actually watch the dynamic processes occurring in a cell, they obtain the ability to ask very in-depth questions that they never would have been able to even kind of think about before. Marks on assessments such as quizzes and tests have certainly improved. The one feature that always really strikes me at the end of a course, I'll have students come to me again and again and again, and they'll say, how would we ever have learned about that process in a cell if we hadn't learned using the model pieces? And I'll have students come back at the end of first or second or even fourth year university, and they'll tell me that they've sat in a university lecture listening to a prof explain some processes in a cell or some aspect of biology, and they continue in their own minds to visualize the model pieces. Okay. The third criteria that I'd like to speak about for the Global Teacher Prize is bringing the community into your classroom. John does this in a very unique way because of his real gift of storytelling. So even if you were to watch John teaching a biology or science lesson, you'd say there's an edge of storytelling about it. But I've observed John telling his students stories about different community members, local, global, and the students are just mesmerized. They're captivated because of the way that John's able to share the story. So he would tell stories about a scientist's life, about the life of an individual musician, of athletes, and he uses these stories of people and communities around the world to also help students see life lessons, the value in perseverance. And so because of John's gift of storytelling, he truly does, in a very wonderful, compelling, unique way, bring different individuals and communities right into his classroom. The fourth criteria for the Global Teacher Prize that I'd like to speak to is helping children become global citizens by providing a values-based education. So I can't think of anyone that I've worked with during my career that does this better than John. And John's able to do it because of his own personal qualities. So John's truly a man of great integrity. He shows respect for everyone. He has an incredible work ethic. He sets goals for himself, which he works diligently to achieve. And he's a person of incredible passion. So he's passionate when he's teaching. He's passionate about music, about athletics. He's a very, very passionate person. The other thing that John consistently does is provide positive feedback for people. So again, his students, colleagues, athletes, he consistently encourages and provides positive reinforcement. And what that does for people is it allows people to truly believe in themselves. And that's a gift that each person then can carry forward in their life. So John's own personal set of values truly are an avenue by which students live in a values-based education when they're in John's classroom. In the application that's been submitted for John MacLellan for the Global Teacher Prize, you're going to read in the dossier or view in the videos many of the other criteria that John meets for the Global Teacher Prize. As I've said, John is an exemplary teacher. I haven't worked with a better teacher in my 31-year career. He truly transforms how biology can be taught, and he truly transforms students' lives in his interaction with the students that he teaches. I encourage you to consider John for the Global Teacher Prize.
So Mr. MacLellan's Stations is very good because it's more hands-on, and shows us like in depth about like the pictures and the molecules and how they work.
Yeah, so instead of just learning on paper, we actually get to put our hands, like learn how to do it, like move it around, which is very cool when it comes to learning. It's something that no other teacher has done, and it was a great experience. 2 hydrogen molecules go through, causing this to spin, making the energy molecule, and then it bonds with an oxygen to make water molecule, and then this becomes inner cell fluid.
Hi there. My name is Catherine Bazina, and I'd like to take a few minutes today to express why I'm excited and honored to endorse Mr. John MacLellan's application for the Varkey Foundation's Global Teacher Prize today. Having been fortunate to complete 11 years of postgraduate studies in my life thus far, it's safe to say that I've come upon countless teachers and professors. I was privileged to be taught grade 10 biology by Mr. MacLellan, and to this day, he stands out in my mind as one of the most dedicated, passionate, and inspiring teachers that I've ever had the fortune of being taught by. Mr. MacLellan had first begun his endeavors with VertMac when I was in his grade 10 biology class. I remember the very first lesson in which he used magnets to illustrate the concept of DNA replication. And I remember seeing many light bulbs going off in the classroom in that moment in time. There was the light bulb moment for his students, whom found that this topic was suddenly much easier to conceptualize with his, with the visual aid of his illustrative approach. And then there was his light bulb moment where he realized that he could essentially revolutionize the way he was teaching core biology and enhance the learning of his students therein. Despite knowing that it would take countless unpaid hours and dedication, like the passionate teacher that Mr. MacLellan is, he began at that point devoting his personal life to the world of magnets, creating an interactive model to teach core concepts in biology. Little did he know at that time, his dedication would go on to change the lives of those that he taught and empower their appreciation for the beautiful world of biology. Mr. MacLellan's innovative and interactive teaching style certainly opened my eyes to the world of science and started the fire that would fuel my subsequent path. Following high school, I completed a double honor specialization in physiology and psychology at the University of Western Ontario, and subsequently completed my medical doctorate degree at the University of Ottawa. I'm presently an internal medicine resident in the nation's capital, and I hope to one day pursue a career in the field of geriatric medicine. I am exceptionally grateful for having had the pleasure of learning from Mr. MacLellan, one of the most incredible teachers that I've been privileged to encounter thus far. His selfless devotion and passion for teaching, I know surely, continue to touch the lives of his fortunate students and inspire their ongoing love for biology and the world of science in general. Congratulations on all of your outstanding accomplishments, Mr. MacLellan, and I look forward to seeing all that the future has for you. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Nicole, and I had Mr. MacLellan in my grade 12 year of high school. He's definitely the most passionate and dedicated teacher I've ever came across. He has made school so fun and easy and interactive, especially with biology being a course where we're learning a lot of concepts that are beyond our eye and we can't see. He has really found a creative way to essentially shrink us down to the size of a cell and put us in a place where he can show us these processes right in front of our eyes, which is absolutely amazing, and I hope it inspires more teachers to find creative ways other than the path that a lot of teachers take with like the textbook and diagrams. This has definitely helped my learning experience in high school. He was definitely very dedicated to teaching us, but on the other side of that, he was also always there for us outside of class. For example, I often got very stressed and had a lot of anxiety about getting good grades, but he was always there to talk to me. And I actually ended up getting, in my graduating year, the award for having the highest average in my graduating class. And I definitely think he played a huge role in that, because he was always there to help me with my stress, and not just biology, but with any of the courses that I was going through. And it also helped my transition to university as well. So there's such a difference of being told by a teacher or a textbook that water, H2O, is being made in a certain process, to actually getting to see it with your eyes right in front of you live. So for example, so I am now in my second year of university studying medical sciences, and I got a position to be a bio mentor, where I basically mentor and tutor first year biology students. And being in Mr. MacLellan's class has really inspired me, and I want to bring this and show this to students who may have not gotten this opportunity in high school, and show them what the magnets are really all about. So I can basically bring this sheet of magnetic metal to my workshops that I'll be running, and I can bring a bunch of magnets, and the students there can play around with them, create, and move around, so that they get the hands-on experience that I got in high school to help them learn and collaborate with each other.
Do you guys want to tell me what's going on here?
Well, we made a picture of Luca, the first cell to ever be made, and like all the other cells kind of branch off from this cell. So it's very basic, but there's still a lot going on inside of it.
It's made up of seven components. It's got a cell wall, a cell membrane, protein channels.
Okay.
It's got a ribosome, water, cytoskeleton, and then worker protein here, and glucose.
Okay. I remember that part, the glucose part.
Yeah.
Do you remember what LUCA stands for?
Last universal common ancestor.
Wow, excellent. Okay, that's fantastic.
Is that it?
Well, I know that from this cell, everything came after it. So to change like this cell into other ones, they turned on and off genes inside the cell, so it could differentiate and become plant cells and animal cells and like different bacteria. Yeah, and make different things that we have today.
Wow. So that's the ancestor of all of us in the room right now and those watching.
Yep.
Right? Okay, very, very cool.
That's cool. Thank
Okay.
you. Hello, my name is Hasina Tilahun, and I recently completed my undergraduate degree in political science. I was first taught by Mr. MacLellan in grade 9 8 years ago, and then again in grade 11 and in grade 12. Although Mr. MacLellan has created a world of biology in his classroom using his magnetic models, he still recognizes that there is a world out there in which his students exist, and this world usually and unfortunately defines people based on race and other social indicators. So one thing I appreciate about Mr. MacLellan as a teacher is that he's able to merge these worlds together by challenging what we experience and what we see out there. When he teaches, he makes sure that he emphasizes the similarities that exist between people of different ethnicities, and that goes on to challenge our own perceptions of what it means to be different from one another, especially because most of the time these differences that we see as students and as young people in high school are based upon physical attributes such as skin color. And so when Mr. MacLellan teaches us and he talks about these fundamental biological aspects of being human, such as cells, he shows us that there is so much that is similar between us, and he pushes us to think critically and to challenge our own perceptions, which I appreciated as a student. Another example of Mr. MacLellan's great teaching is his commitment to presenting the full story to his students. I remember one time when he taught us about HeLa cells, he sat in front of the class and he told us about the story about this African American woman named Henrietta Lacks, whose cervical cancer cells were taken without her permission and used to achieve a lot of great scientific accolades, such as her cervical cancer cells were used in finding or in research for polio vaccine, and also more recently in research that has to do with HIV and AIDS. And so after he presented us with that information, he went on to teach the lesson using his magnetic model. And that gave me an in-depth understanding of what I was learning about, and it made the lesson even more interesting to have a contextual understanding of the cell he was teaching about. So Mr. MacLellan's class is very interesting for so many reasons, but it's those little things that stand out to me about his teaching, and it made my experience in his class richer than I could have possibly gotten in other classes. So I fully support Mr. MacLellan, and I don't know anybody more deserving to be recognized for his commitment and passion for teaching than Mr. MacLellan is.
Hi there, my name is Mike DuPont. I'm coming to you today from Toronto, Ontario, Canada, and I'm here today to talk to you about Mr. John MacLellan. And, the theme of my video is why John matters. I'm living proof that no matter what life throws you or what cards you are dealt in your life, that the love, the passion, and the commitment of a teacher can be absolutely transformational and have generational impact. And I think as I talk to you about my story today, and encompassing it in a very short video is obviously very difficult, because it's been a life journey to where I am today and the successes that I have achieved. But let me spend some time telling you my story. When I met Mr. MacLellan, I was 15. I was a young kid who was in a very bad place, in a very bad position. I came from an immigrant family. My mom and dad both immigrated here from Portugal. They were both very hardworking, blue-collar people. But I lived in an abusive family. I lived in an abusive environment. My father was a violent alcoholic. I watched my mom and dad fight, obviously, my entire life, but I watched my father essentially abuse my mother and my siblings and myself pretty much until the age of 15. I was in a home that was broken, but I was on a path to bad things and to incarceration, essentially. I was a kid who had no direction, no mentorship, no oversight. I essentially was a latchkey kid. I would walk home by myself in kindergarten. I would stay up late. But things became very bad for me at a very early age. I experimented with drugs very early on. I experimented with drugs when I was 10. My first sexual partner was when I was 11. So those are just examples of some of the things that happened to me. But given the fact that I didn't have oversight and whatnot, I was a kid that did not have any semblance of education or importance of education or any kind of guidance around my educational future. I was essentially held back a number of grades in elementary school, and that would obviously lead me to be, nearly 16 years old when I graduated elementary school and went to high school when I started grade 9. And when I graduated from elementary school, I essentially was illiterate. I read at a grade 4 level. I couldn't write, and essentially I was going into high school in a very bad position. But things very quickly turned around for me in the year 1987, when I believe a higher being and a higher power led me to Mr. MacLellan. I was an athlete of his at Regina Monday, and Mr. MacLellan saw something different in me that a lot of teachers hadn't before. He was a person who I believe saw deep down inside a boy who was misguided, misunderstood, and needed some direction and some much needed guidance. And so, and a lot of it, if I split my time with Mr. MacLellan, it really comes down to two things. My experience with him in the classroom, but also my experience with him as a coach. And in the classroom, he was a very caring, a very dedicated but tough teacher, but also very open to working and very patient to working with his students in order to give them the guidance and the necessary direction so that they could be successful in their academic careers. He was very patient with me, given that I was in the situation that I was in, but he was very calm and collected with me when I needed support, often spending a lot of time with me after class, but also time over the phone. And as a coach, Mr. MacLellan was a very tough coach, but also very fair. He held his students to a very high expectation, but at the same time, he was also caring enough to work with them to guide them and teach them on where they needed to go and what they needed to do. And I think as a teacher and coach, he was firm but fair, and I think this is a great example of a student or a teacher that would spend the time and the energy, as I mentioned in the beginning, the love, the compassion, and the energy for his students to ensure that they achieved their greatest successes. And I think that if there's one thing that he taught me and that I carry throughout my life today is I know now that, and because of Mr. MacLellan, that setting an aggressive objective and setting a very lofty objective for yourself is nothing that you should be afraid of. As long as you work harder than everyone else and have a plan, you will achieve your ultimate goals. And that is something that I carry on today. So ultimately, he was right. And so if you fast forward, to 2017, 30 years essentially later, when I started school, I was essentially illiterate. I was a basic student. I wasn't even going to college. The dream of going to college was not even in my cards. I essentially graduated from school. I had taken advanced courses. I had caught up and worked hard, but had the mentorship where ultimately I would end up going to university. I would get a business degree, and I would go on to have, up to this point, a wildly successful career. Today, I run a multinational organization. I guess, quote unquote, I am a multimillionaire. I sit on a number of global boards. I'm a respected businessman in the Canadian business community, and all of this is attributed to the time and effort and energy that Mr. MacLellan, put into me. And when I think about this, and as I talk about it, it's actually quite funny I've never written this down, but when I think about where I came from and the fact that I read at a grade 4 level and I was essentially illiterate when I went into high school. Today, as we speak, I'm attending Harvard, where I'm in the process of completing my executive MBA. And so imagine that, a kid who was essentially illiterate starting high school is actually attending Harvard. And that is really attributed to the love and the compassion and the dedication of a teacher, and that is Mr. MacLellan. But the things that I am very proud of, and the things that I can honestly say I would not be in this position today, is if it wasn't for Mr. MacLellan. I'm a father of 2 beautiful boys. I'm a supportive and loving husband. My wife and I are actively involved in philanthropic activity. We kind of figured out by the year 2020 we'll have donated in excess of $1 million to support underprivileged kids in and around the GTA, as well as in London, and that is something that I am really, really, really proud of. And these achievements and the things that I have achieved up to this point in my young career, my young life, is really attributed to my time with Mr. MacLellan, and I need to spend the time to thank him. So the person that I have become today really is due in part to the commitment, the passion, and the love of a teacher, and I would be nowhere if it wasn't for John MacLellan. Thank you for listening to me, and all the best.
My name is Joanna Johnson, and I'm the visual arts teacher at Catholic Central High School. I've known John for approximately 8 years, and he's always been a mentor to me. He's offered me good advice and classroom management tips, but more importantly, as his colleague, I've always come to recognize his passion for teaching, especially the creativity that he brings into the classroom on a daily basis. When I first walked into John's classroom, I was really blown away by the incredible displays and colors and shapes that were literally plastered all over his walls. Initially, I had no idea what this display was. However, once John explained it to me, his magnet concept, I realized what an innovative and well-developed teaching tool this really is, not only for students, but for individuals like myself who have little background in biology or an in-depth understanding of how each component of a cell functions or how it's physically made up. Throughout the years, John and I have always discussed cross-curricular projects to engage student learning further. We've developed a mural together, and arguably visual arts and biology are disciplines that promote awareness and sensitivity to the environment, and more importantly, they motivate individuals to really work collaboratively toward a common goal that really involves changing behaviors concerning the environment. Through John's work, I've come to appreciate and really understand the complexity of cells, including the enigmas that are found within nature. I was inspired to give my own students a project involving natural history drawings. They had to research them, explain where they came from, why people depicted what they did, and I also encouraged them to study nature outside on their own. So they collected different specimens and eventually drew them from life. They're currently working on a natural history project of their own at this point. On many levels, by John teaching students about the complexity of cellular structures and life itself, he's also teaching students to recognize the interconnectedness between living systems and the idea of stewardship itself. The idea here is that if we really take the time to closely examine living structures and the complexity of cells, we can therefore appreciate the natural world further. The way John approaches teaching really allows students to recognize the fragility of nature and really provides them with opportunities to recognize the delicate balance that exists within it. In essence, we need to reconceive our relationship with nature in order to create positive change.
Hello, my name is Jenna Dearlove and I'm a teacher for the London District Catholic School Board. John is my mentor. I worked with John just over a year ago when I was teaching at CCH. We bonded over our love for science and for teaching. When I got my permanent contract, I was required to get a mentor, and I was excited to ask John to fulfill that role. I had the opportunity to see John teach in his classroom using the magnetic model. So he uses his magnetic model to tell a story that takes place not just on the blackboard, but that encompasses the entire room. He incorporates all these little stories that the students can make real life connections to that somehow lead back to this overall big picture or big story. The students are captivated, hanging on to every word, and they build their own note. They're drawing symbols, they're using labels and annotations, and then they have an opportunity to get up and become characters in the story. They go to their stations, they use their own miniature version of the model, and they literally construct their knowledge. I wish I was taught science this way, but I'm happy that I have the opportunity to learn from John now and to improve my teaching practice.
Hi, my name is Bianca. I was first taught by John MacLellan 14 years ago in grade 9 science. I had the pleasure of being his student again in grade 11 and 12 biology. I am now working in the field of international public health based in the UK and in Uganda. When I think about John MacLellan as a teacher and my experience as a student, there are many things that resonate with me, but one in particular was his ability to cultivate this classroom environment and really ensure that it was a protected space dedicated to learning and teaching. And I think about being a high school student, there's so much going on, emotionally, socially, academically, that being able to just park everything at the door and walk in, to take on the lesson at hand that day, put magnet to metal and learn is something that is so invaluable. And as well, something that takes a lot of time and commitment to ensuring that that's actually what happens. Only now, in hindsight, do I recognize how difficult that is within the existing school system to ensure that students get that kind of space. And I think it's something that's not as pervasive as we would want to believe, and definitely indicative of a quality of teaching and a standard that we should be striving for, not just within the Ontario school system or in Canada, but also globally, is something that's so relevant and necessary to promoting, student engagement and student learning, and something that, I've really come to appreciate. So I would highly recommend John MacLellan for this award. I think his standard of teaching is incredible, and something we would all be as fortunate to have as students. So thank you for listening.
Hi there, my name's Marcia Lefebvre. I live in London, and I'm currently a pharmaceutical sales rep with Bollinger Ingelheim. I met John 32 years ago. That was in 1985, and that began with grade 9 math class at Regina Mundi High School. We had a teacher that went off on sick leave, and John MacLellan came in. And from there, I realized it was probably one of the most interesting teachers I was ever going to meet in my entire life, and very honest. I know he had days where he came in and said, "Okay, class, forget everything I taught you yesterday. There's a much better method." Where I really started to develop a connection with John, I'd say would be when he was coaching me track in high school, and he just really made me feel that I was important, that he really cared about my success. And that really drove me. Of course, I wanted to succeed for myself, but I really more wanted to share in my success with him. I think this relationship really motivated me to pursue track at university, and I did have a very successful 4 years. And during that time, he always maintained contact. He always kept his interest in what I was doing, and this just continued with our connection. And so I did get the opportunity, as time went on, there was always, with each discussion that we had, there was always some science documentary that came up, some new book, some new method of getting his kids excited about science. And this is where I saw, watching him build his magnets at CCH, and always talking about the magnets. So finally I had the chance to go into his classroom and see what these magnets were all about. And I actually had the opportunity to watch him teach these kids. And I think for him, it just spurred him to keep going, because he really saw that difference in his students, where there was concepts that were very difficult to grasp, and suddenly they were really understanding. And I think through conversations with him, he really just saw, why is it that the students in his class should be the only ones to really benefit from all of this, experience and faster learning. So that's literally where the VertMac and now BioClicks business started. And for us, the start of many more really cool conversations. So, when I look back, 32 years with John, it's always been growing. It's very natural. Even when I had I had an unplanned pregnancy, and I was stuck at St. Joe's Hospital for over 2 months. And John was there for me. He came in, he supported. I came from a very strict background, so it was not an easy time. And I had started many businesses and different jobs, and he's been there always supporting me, and I know that this is somebody who will always have my back. So if there's any way that I can describe John, it's passionate. I've never seen anybody so passionate about teaching and coaching as John. And I always ask people when I that went to Regina Monday or to CCH, hey, did you ever have John MacLellan as a teacher? And I cannot believe, honestly, the responses that I get. I am just awed at the number of lives that he has seriously, positively influenced and helped along a better path, and that's including myself. So I just feel really blessed to be able to be part of John's life.
Hi there, my name is Erin Bazina. Mr. MacLellan was my biology teacher back in high school about 10 years ago. After all these years, I can still say that Mr. MacLellan's passion and dedication to teaching was such an inspiration. Mr. MacLellan taught biology in a world of magnets. He built his innovative magnetic classroom really from the ground up on his own. He was constantly working to develop, expand, and improve his magnetic teaching tools, which really took countless hours outside of the classroom. But Mr. MacLellan was always willing to put the time and effort in to make his teaching method as intuitive and effective as possible. I will never forget this one day when I was practicing the phases of mitosis at my student magnetic workstation in the classroom, that there was one aspect of the process that wasn't perfectly intuitive to replicate with the magnetic kit. And when I brought this to Mr. MacLellan's attention, he immediately started planning a way to make the process easily and clearly reproducible. And despite all the time that he had spent making the kits up to that point, he remade every single student kit to make this change. So it was really amazing. Personally, high school was particularly biology class with Mr. MacLellan, was a time where I grew and developed a love for science. And since high school, I've gone on to obtain my Bachelor of Science with a major in physiology at McGill University, and more recently graduated with a Doctor of Pharmacy from University of Toronto's Leslie Dan Faculty of Pharmacy. And in all my years of education, I can honestly say that Mr. MacLellan has been one of the most devoted, enthusiastic, and passionate teachers that I have ever had the pleasure of learning from. He would go to great lengths to inspire just one more student to have that same passion for science that he has. I'm really thankful to Mr. MacLellan for the role that he has had in shaping my career so far, and I commend Mr. MacLellan for all of his achievements and his dedication to teaching throughout the years.
My name is Rick Sheardown. I'm the Vice Principal at Catholic Central High School in London. I've been here for just over a year now, and my first encounter, or my most memorable encounter with Mr. MacLellan, was on our parent night, and I think we had invited close to 400 or 500 families in from around the school, in to tour the school, see what was happening at CCH, and just to get a feel of where their kids might be going to school. I was down in the front of the school greeting parents and shaking hands, and then as people took their tours and come back, there was a lot of buzz and a lot of talk about the science hallway. Now, I'd been down the science hallway before, but I didn't see anything unusual until I came down to check it out myself when the parents were here. And what I saw was parents and students engaged in, like what you'll see here is the magnetic classroom. Small example of it in the hallway, but I saw parents and students working on problems, moving things around. Parents were just absolutely taken with it. And then when I walk into the classroom that night, and there's Mr. MacLellan and a large group of families, all of them peeling stuff off, putting stuff up, solving equations, laughing, having a great time while they're experiencing the learning that's going on in that classroom. I was just absolutely, my breath was taken away, as this is what we strive for on a daily basis, and here it was happening on our parent night in an obvious way. So for that, we're very thankful that Mr. MacLellan has brought this revolutionary idea to CCH, and we're happy that he's here teaching with us.
When I was first introduced to the model, it was on a Monday morning and came in from the weekend, and John, who designed the model, came out and said, "Oh my gosh, you got to come in here and check this out, what I did this weekend." And so I came in and I couldn't believe it. He had magnetized all the terms and major concepts out of the textbook. And they were up on the board, and he put sheet metal up on all the walls around the classroom, and it was amazing. But it was also overwhelming. So I turned around, walked out, and I went, "Oh my gosh, that was just a tremendous amount of work," and it was very stimulating, exciting. So I didn't talk too much about it for about a month, and it was parent-teacher interview night, and these parents were walking down the hallway with this, buzz about the magnetic classroom. So I'm thinking, like, if these parents know about this magnetic classroom, that means the students have talked to them about it, and they're going home and sitting at the supper table and saying, "Wow, what an interesting biology class I have." So I came and I approached John and I said, "Tell me more about this. There's definitely something here." And so he started walking me through a few ideas, and I was hooked. That was it. It was phenomenal. And to this day, I cannot teach a lesson without using the magnets. The dynamics of the classroom changes dramatically. The skill development for the students is very, very high. Their note-making skills improve every day, and just like anything, repetition is going to help out. Their participation improves. They ask questions. It was just, you'd put some type of model up on the board, and the questions just happened. Why? Because they can see it. The problem-solving skills is fantastic as well, that you can create this before picture using the magnetic models and an after picture of the magnetic models, and the students have to fill in the during. Really good thinking there, and the students feel really empowered when they can figure out that problem for themselves instead of me telling them like I used to do in the past before using the model. There are many more aha moments from the students. They'll be sitting there and they'll be working and trying to figure out a problem using the model, and then they go, "Aha, I got it." And that's just very rewarding for a teacher to have that happen. Another, I'd like to tell you about a situation that happened during a lesson, and it was the mitosis lesson. And I was up on the board and working with the magnets, and I had created this picture, and there was silence behind me, and it was very intimidating because I thought, "Oh, what are the students doing?" And I turn around and they are focused on the board, they're writing their notes, and it was just, I got goosebumps looking at this group of students who were focused, engaged, and they were learning. This model brings the textbook to life, and I will not teach any other way than using this magnetic model.
The magnets allow me to see the same things that my classmates are seeing on the board. And how that works is that along with braille magnets, I have a separate piece of sheet metal on my desk where my teacher will model the reactions there for me as they're modeling them on the board for the rest of the class. And by doing this, it allows me to see what's going on as it's happening, and it also allows myself and my peers to repeat the reactions as many times as we need to in order to fully understand what's going on.
Hi there, my name is Joanne Merkley. I'm a former student athlete who was taught and coached by John MacLellan from 1987 to 1992 at Regina Mining College. John made a genuine connection with myself, like so many other students and athletes. He was one of the most influential people in my teenage years. John taught me to enjoy the process of becoming the best student and athlete I could be, to be happy in the journey I was on, that pain is only temporary, but pride in knowing you gave it your very best, worked your very hardest, is forever. I was not the smartest student, nor the fastest runner, but that didn't matter to John. He always supported me and understood what I needed to be the best version of myself. The connection John made with me was not always an easy one. I was the complicated girl and didn't always make the best decisions. There was disappointment, along with plenty of laughter. He never judged me, but stood by me and helped to guide me. John found ways to connect with me through a shared love of the Beatles and hockey. Our high school did not have a girls' hockey team when I attended, and I really wanted to play. John coached the junior boys team and let me try out. I was never going to make it, but to be given the opportunity to try, to be included, to not limit myself was an important lesson I learned from John. He showed me how to fight for what I wanted and how to be a strong woman. John always made me feel like I was an important part of the team and the classroom. He made me believe in myself by showing he believed in me. I know I am one of the lucky ones that was able to have such a dedicated teacher and coach at such a critical time in my life. John's passion for inspiring students and athletes to be the greatest they can be is something I now try to pass on to my children. It's been over 30 years since I was last taught or coached by John, and the connection that started out as a teacher-student, coach-athlete has now grown into a lifelong friendship that I will cherish forever.
Oh, hello everyone. You've caught me at my regular Sunday morning routine with my hot tea, my high school hockey jersey, and reminiscing through my high school yearbook here. Today in particular, I'm really focusing on one very special high school team to me, and I'd like to tell you a little bit about it. I remember on a nice Wednesday morning, late 1993, an announcement going over the PA system at Regina Mundi College in London, Ontario, saying, "Any female interested in joining the girls hockey team this year, please meet in room 113 at lunch today." Everybody kind of looked around. Did that say girls? Did that say female hockey team? There was a huge buzz around Regina Mundi that day, knowing that we were maybe going to start something very special. Little did we know, the 14 girls that ended up making that hockey team truly made history and were trailblazers in what's now to become a very thriving girls hockey league in southwestern Ontario, even more than just in London, Ontario. And all of this happened. All of it happened because of a very special man that we were fortunate enough to have as a teacher in our school and a leader in our school, and that was Coach John MacLellan. I am honored to speak to the leadership and innovation of John MacLellan, who truly changed the mindset of the 14 girls on that original high school hockey team, as well as the thousands of young female athletes that have followed in their path. Most of the 14 athletes have become teachers ourselves or community volunteers, community coaches, which speaks volumes to John's leadership. Back in 1993, Coach MacLellan realized a passion within his students, female athletes, that had yet to be tapped, and even had to battle the school's administration to ensure that his female students were guaranteed the same opportunity as their male peers had been given for decades. He was both confident and humble as he led us through our practices leading up to our major competition. He spoke often of his own mentors and coaches, most notably his own father. I am not sure if Coach MacLellan truly understands how much he taught all of us about respect through both his serious and humorous anecdotes of his relationship with his dad. It truly is amazing the impact one person can have on so many. As an adult, I value the friendship and the mentorship that I still have with John. One of the highlights in my life was being invited out to Antigonish, Nova Scotia, John's hometown, to meet his family, including his mentor, his father. It is in Antigonish that I realized where John's selflessness, his innovation, his leadership all came from. Truly inspiring. This is one of my most prized possessions right here. This once hung in the trophy case at Regina Mundi College, noting our initial year starting the girls hockey program in London, Ontario. But more importantly, as I understand from John, this is one of the last things that he and his father created together. Very special to me. And in true John MacLellan fashion, he didn't keep it for himself. He passed it on to make sure that his impact on other people continues to happen. John is always a coach, always a teacher, and always a great role model and friend.
Hello, my name is Michelle Moore, and I am a mathematics teacher here at Catholic Central High School in London, Ontario. I was first introduced to John MacLellan when I was a student at Regina Mundi College. In my grade 11 year, he became my high school hockey coach for London's first ever high school girls hockey team. Unfortunately, I was never given the opportunity to have him as a teacher in the classroom. A number of my friends, however, were lucky enough to have him and spoke very highly of not only his love of the subject he taught, but also for his passion for hockey. After that first season of hockey, I knew exactly what my friends meant, that John was a dedicated, passionate, and caring educator who always strived to see his students and athletes succeed. And so since that first year, 1994, I had headed out to university to become a math teacher and continued to play pickup hockey on the side along the way. It was in the year 2001 when I walked into Catholic Central as a new teacher and was relieved when I found out that John as well was here at the school. Immediately we were both excited about coaching the girls hockey team together, but I also was thankful that I had someone that I could lean on. I look up to John. The professional relationship that we have as teachers and as coaches is a special one. There isn't a day that goes by where we don't collaborate our thoughts. We are constantly discussing how we can make our school better. One in particular scenario in the classroom is that we strive to have our students present every day, as you can't teach them if they're not physically in front of us. We understand that our students are involved on sports teams and clubs, and also away for class field trips. But a day absent in the class can impact a student's academic success. We praise students for getting involved with school activities, but there has to be a limit of the number of days that a student is absent from class. This has been an ongoing struggle for the two of us. Tough for us to try to figure out a balance where we can meet the students in the middle. At the hockey rink with our team, we look forward to working with our players in a more relaxed atmosphere. Making connections with our students away from academics allows us to get to know them at a different level. The relationship we build with our players translates very well into our classroom dynamics, a positive experience for all. There is no doubt that John's heart and soul goes into absolutely everything that he does, not only for his students, for his athletes, and for his colleagues. I am ever so lucky that I was introduced to John so long ago. What an impact he has had to my life and career. Crazy enough that I keep all of the little awards that we've kind of received along the way, including I do have one I made for John. My first hockey year with him, the Best Bandana Award. I was a ringette player, and so him teaching me how to play hockey, the best pass, better than her shot, but man, I scored a goal with that not as good as my pass shot award, was an award I received because I was really excited about the passes I was making. Shots were difficult to do. And when I was pregnant with my first child, I did get a Best Baby Award and the Best Most Funnest Coach to Coach With and Thank You Award. Those were all from John, and yet, I don't know if mine tops his off, but a little bit of scrapbooking skills. That was a Triple Chicken Award, and that's just because he's just a triple chicken, crazy, funny man with, of course, his crazy looking hair. So these are things that I've kept. They're here at the school, and they mean a lot to me, and that's exactly why I'm honored to be able to share John's story with you.
I met John MacLellan in grade 11 biology class. I was his student, and he was a fairly new teacher at the time. Since then, he was my coach as well as my mentor. John was one of the few teachers in my high school who supported the girls coming out to shinny hockey with the boys, and from there we were able to develop the first girls hockey team at RMC. As a coach, he was creative, motivating, and very committed. As a teacher, John allowed us to do things that I hadn't done in science before so that we could express our knowledge in different ways. I remember doing creative writing assignments about biology. I remember if we were stuck on a test question because we couldn't get started, he would give us a hint, not give us full marks, but then he would save us from blowing a whole question. Once I graduated from university, our relationship moved from student-teacher to more of a strong friendship, and John was very much like a mentor to me. We spent lots of hours talking about biology on the phone and in person, because biology is different than teaching physics and chemistry. It's hard for students to visualize what they can't see. And so one of the things that John came up with was this Vert Mac kit where the students can manipulate parts of the cell or parts of a chemical reaction and make it happen over and over again or repeat it. And I know that when I pull out similar lessons to what John teaches with his VertMac tools, that my visual and kinesthetic learners are always very happy. And year in, year out, my classes consist of 90% visual kinesthetic learners. Even the auditory learners, though, John finds a way to teach them. He had a student who was a student who was blind, who he made a Braille system so that she could learn that way. Having been a teacher for now over 20 years, I have met very few, if not no other teacher who is as committed to the success of his students. And for that reason, I think that John would be an excellent recipient of your National Teaching Award.
My name's Erin. I am in my second year of nursing at the University of Western Ontario, and Mr. MacLellan was my biology teacher in high school as well as my ice hockey coach for 4 years. Mr. MacLellan's teaching style is unlike any other I've ever experienced before. It's very different from the regular teacher teaching the students, reading through the textbook, going home with pages of homework. We got to class and Mr. MacLellan had his own teaching style completely. It was more working with the student rather than working over the student, and that really helped me succeed in my biology, and I was able to achieve the mark I needed to pursue the path that I wanted to. I think what sets my experience unique from others is my attempt to balance school sports with school itself. So it was pretty helpful for me that Mr. MacLellan just happened to be the ice hockey coach as well as the biology teacher. And I know he offered that extra help not only to me but to all of his students. It didn't matter what time of the day, what time of the week, he'd always offer that extra hour to explain something you were struggling with, and he even took time at a hockey tournament we went to kind of sit down and run me through everything just to make sure it was really solid and I was ready to pursue the next class. And that showed too in nursing. For my first year science courses, it was almost as if it was a review because the biology class that he ran was so comprehensive and I learned so much.
My name is Nick Forte, and I'm here to endorse and recommend John MacLellan for the Global Teacher Prize. John and I started our careers teaching in London over 30 years ago. I've been in his classroom many times. I've brought student teachers, colleagues, and students to his classroom to see how he teaches and how he gets his message across. John has a unique way of teaching. It's authentic, it's clear, it's articulate, and it brings forward also moral conviction. John uses language and images and also the prior knowledge of his students. And the way he does that is he gets the students to construct their own knowledge and approach. That gives the students the ability to relate to these facts in new ways. They write to decode and for coherence, and this leads to critical thinking, a deeper understanding, and an opportunity to experience the freedom to exercise again how they think, how they create, how being critical and using their imaginations. It works. It's neurally based in the brain. It's physical connections that John gets, and it works tremendously because I can see the students come back. I can see it in their eyes. I can see it in the way they handle themselves in the classroom. Because one thing John has is soul, and you can walk in that classroom and you can feel it, you can see it, that he has a connection with those kids. He has authentic learning. He has a connectedness with them. They're aware, they understand, they integrate. That is something that is rare to see in a classroom. You get bits of it, but you don't see the whole complete picture, and I think John has that. So that's why I recommend and endorse John MacLellan for the Global Teacher Prize. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Laura Leonardo and I'm in my third year of nursing at Western, the BSCM program. And I have known Mr. MacLellan now for 6 years. He taught me back in grade 10, 11, and 12. And he was the one who actually influenced me to take academic. After grade 9, I had taken applied and he had gotten in contact with me and said, hey, you got a really good mark. I think that you could be an academic student. So I took academic thinking that, you know, now I've built the skills and I've had him as a teacher in grade 10. So ever since then, I've absolutely loved science. He's actually the reason why I continued to take biology and chemistry in grade 11 and 12 and go into nursing, because I thought, I love the way he teaches, and I just really get the material. I really love going to his class. I always look forward to it. And now being in university and just seeing the slideshows, it kind of sucks compared to the teaching that I used to have with Mr. MacLellan, because I will still even use the idea of magnets now, going through and writing down and drawing the pictures of everything that we've learned, because it helps me to visualize the content more instead of just seeing it and reading it over and over, because your brain doesn't take that in. So the way he teaches is unlike any other teacher I've ever had, and it's completely influential to everybody, and it's amazing what he's done. And I think everyone across Canada and the world should have a taste of it, because it's truly changing and impacting the way people are learning. And he's still a mentor to me. I still go and visit him whenever I have time, and not only is he an amazing teacher, again, he just is a great person. He genuinely cares about you, and I think that he fits the criteria of anybody who deserves this award. So if anyone, it should be Mr. MacLellan. Thanks so much.
My name is Tammy Denemy. I am a history teacher at Catholic Central High School. I've taught with John MacLellan for the past 26 years on and off at different schools. I've known him for my whole career. I'm thrilled that he's applying for this award. I think he's an incredibly worthy candidate. I know he's a worthy candidate because he's a great science teacher. He won Canada's highest teaching award, the Governor General's Award. But I also know on a more personal level from the students that he teaches, they speak to me about him. They tell me he's interesting, he's smart, he's clear, he's passionate about his subject area, and when they get John, they get a great education. I also know that he's a great teacher from another perspective too. Being a history teacher, sometimes when historical scientific figures come up in class, the kids know about them from John. They've heard about him in science class, even though they're historical figures. So I know John is incredibly well-rounded and interested in education in a more holistic sense than just a narrow view of biology. I know this also from my discussions with him about world events. He's infinitely curious, and he gives the kids a broader perspective. He has a lot of respect for not just biology, but for all the disciplines. And sometimes in maths and sciences, this is not always the case, and I really appreciate John's well-rounded character. So good luck, John. I think you're a great candidate for this award.
Hi, my name is Karina LeBlanc, and I'm the Executive Director at the Pondish Fonde Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship at the University of New Brunswick. I've known John for more than 20 years, and I've had the pleasure of having much dialogue about his passions, specifically around this idea of creating new and innovative tools in the classroom and creating a whole new generation of young change makers who are inspired, engaged, and who have a toolkit to turn their ideas into impact. John has basically taken this innovative approach to experiential learning in the classroom that allows young people to go beyond themselves, go beyond the textbook, and understand that learning is a multifaceted endeavor and a lifelong pursuit. The idea of being able to physically manipulate one's environment in order to understand concepts can be carried over in many different areas. Whether the students continue to pursue biology or if they become leaders in a variety of areas across the country, they now have the confidence to be able to tackle some complex subject matter and turn that into action. Watching John take that classroom experience and really stimulate these group of interested, engaged, and passionate students, and then scale that not only in his school and community, but across the globe by turning his ideas into a business, is an exceptional demonstration of how one teacher can not only change the lives of the students in his immediate surroundings, but can really change the world. I could not be prouder of John MacLellan and highly recommend him for this prize. Congratulations, John, for making a difference in the world.
My name is Maureen O'Neill, and I have 31 years of teaching experience in high school biology and chemistry classrooms. Additionally, I've been a science education professor at Western University for 22 years. I've known John for 20 years, and one only needs to spend a short amount of time with him to learn that he approaches all of his interests with extreme passion and commitment. As a professor of science education, I enjoy exposing my student teachers to innovative teaching ideas so the beginning teachers can build their own teaching repertoire. One of the most wonderful aspects of John's teaching is that it is replicable in any classroom, and the ideas can be applied to the teaching of other disciplines as well. When John shares his ideas with aspiring science teachers, they're in awe of his dedication and enthusiasm for helping students successfully learn their biology. His leadership and willingness to mentor anyone interested using his methodology are indicative of his passion for helping all learners, whether they be high school students, BEd students, or practicing science teachers. Thank you.
At Catholic Central, Mr. MacLellan is always there. If you go to CCH, you know him. He has always had a large presence in our school community, whether you see him running by during cross-country practice, coaching the girls' hockey team, or even saying hello as you pass by his magical sheet metal coated classroom covered in magnetic everything. If you're lucky enough, you could even get him as a teacher. In class, Mr. MacLellan provides valuable biology lessons through a unique teaching system that allows students to become immersed in the material. Mr. MacLellan doesn't focus on the curriculum, he focuses on the students. He consistently goes through extra effort so that every student in his class has a chance to succeed, no matter their level of interest or confidence in the subject. But the most valuable lessons that you will learn from Mr. MacLellan are the life lessons that he integrates into each class, teaching students how to evaluate situations and make decisions for themselves. Mr. MacLellan has been an incredibly large factor in some of the biggest decisions that I have made in my life to date. He is the person who really inspired me to pursue academic excellence, and to push myself to new heights. I am now in the Engineering Science Biomedical Engineering program at the University of Toronto, and Mr. MacLellan and his biology course were a large factor in me making that decision. He also provides a generous scholarship each year to a science student graduating from CCH, another example of his commitment to the success of us students. Mr. MacLellan truly prepares his students for the real world and has completely reworked the definition of teaching in his classroom. I can't think of a better candidate for the Global Teaching Award, and I fully support his nomination in all aspects.
Scientists and researchers look through microscopes to see enlarged cells and gain scientific information. In the same respect, Mr. MacLellan's classroom is like a microscope that allows students to see cells and cell components enlarged in the classroom setting. When students come into the classroom, they learn as real scientists do. Mr. MacLellan's teaching approach allowed me to be a better student, a better learner, and a better scientist. By creating a visual for the students, Mr. MacLellan allowed us to develop our ability to critically think. In second year university, I took a Catholic morality course, and we were assigned a project to teach the class about embryonic stem cell research. So instead of just simply talking about the embryonic stem cells, I actually built it right in front of them using Mr. MacLellan's models. This bridged science and religion together. Following my presentation, when the professor started to teach again, she said, "Sorry, I don't have any interesting visuals like Melissa had. You'll have to do with my boring slideshow." As well, the students had overwhelmingly positive feedback because they now had an understanding of the biology behind the stem cells so that I could talk about the ethical debates surrounding the topic.
My name is Fred Polsey, and I'm a grade 4 teacher with the London District Roman Catholic School Board at St. Jude Elementary School in London, Ontario, Canada. I've been teaching with the Catholic School Board now for 32 years. This is my testimonial for John MacLellan for the prestigious Global Teaching Award. I've known John for 32 years now as both a colleague and as a friend. I've had the good fortune of having both my daughters, Carly and Brian, taught by John at Catholic Central High School. As a result of their time spent in high school with John, both Carly and Brian were quite well prepared for the challenges of achieving a university degree. John is an excellent teacher. During the time John taught my daughters, he spent a 3-year period creating a physical environment in his classroom that sparked and engaged student interest. I remember not hearing from John for weeks on end, only to find out that he had spent many of his evenings and his weekends at school installing large pieces of sheet metal on his classroom walls and hooks from the ceiling so that he could display some of the magnetic models of the cells that the students were going to build and learn about. The models of cells and parts of cells that John built and displayed on the walls, had hanging from the ceiling, created a visual, hands-on, interactive environment for all of the students. His classroom is unlike any other classroom that I've ever been in. His foresight for creating a classroom environment that broke from tradition and brought his course content and learning in general is truly unique. John was highly successful in assisting my daughters in achieving their academic goals. John is also an excellent role model for my daughters. Dedication, commitment, effective problem-solving abilities, being a good citizen, caring for others, a love of learning were traits that John modeled on a daily basis. Not only do I know that John taught and influenced my daughters in a highly positive way, but I do know that John had the same effect and impact on other students as well. Many of the students who I have taught over my 32-year teaching career have gone on to Catholic Central and have been taught by John as well. The consistent feedback that I get from my former students is that John taught and influenced them in a highly positive way. All of my former students comment on the models John has created to assist them in learning, of his unique classroom environment, and how effective his models were in allowing them to understand what he was trying to teach them. Through John's excellent leadership as both a teacher and a role model, he has in many ways prepared my daughters and many of my former students to be lifelong learners who grow into effective, contributing members of society. Thank you.
I first heard about the magnetic classroom through a colleague of mine roughly about 5 years ago. Michelle Poulin, former teacher here at Catholic Central, came to me with the idea of implementing the magnetic classroom at St. Mary's Catholic School in Woodstock. I didn't have any background of what this classroom looked like, so she told me she needed some metal strips put up in the classroom to begin to replicate what Mr. MacLellan and some other teachers here have at Catholic Central. So we went through our budget, we got the panels put up, and from there the classroom started to grow and flourish and thrive. So what happened was students were coming back after taking Mrs. Poulin's class and letting her know that they were much further ahead in the science taken in first and second year at Western, and they were more prepared. When I left St. Mary's, I was fortunate to come back to my alma mater, Catholic Central, and I got to meet Mr. MacLellan and learn that his classroom is above and beyond what was at St. Mary's. It was beyond my wildest dreams. Now watching him lead our science department in the magnetic classroom and the teaching that goes on, and Mrs. Webb as well, what I find is students are coming back and they come back to meet certain teachers, and that one teacher is Mr. MacLellan, to tell him that they are so grateful for the work he's put into helping them with their journey in science and their achievement at the university level. They come back and they say they are so well prepared with Cornell notes, and they're able to visualize what happens from one process to the next. And it's just a blessing and it's a joy to see these students come back and ask specifically for Mr. MacLellan.
I met John about 23 years ago. He was my associate teacher when I was completing my practicum with the Faculty of Education at the University of Western Ontario. From the very beginning, it was readily apparent that John doesn't simply raise the bar, John is the bar. His teaching practices encourage critical thinking, exploration, questioning, active learning as opposed to rote memorization, and thinking outside the box. All important work and life skills when dealing with whatever the future holds. John's involvement in coaching speaks further to his commitment as an educator. He recognizes the benefits of and encourages participation in extracurricular activities to help maintain a healthy mind and body both. Participation in the Associate Teacher Program, together with his development of VERTMAC, indicate his willingness to share his knowledge and methods, a very generous gift that keeps on giving, to student teachers, to peers, to generations of students yet to come. A lifelong learner, John's enthusiasm for knowledge is contagious to those fortunate enough to be in his company, be it in a classroom or extracurricular setting. John's dedication to his students and his profession make him the perfect role model for new teachers, and mutual respect is a benchmark that students will carry well beyond the walls of his classroom. Was I surprised he won a Prime Minister's Award for Teaching Excellence in 2006? Not at all. Is John deserving of the Global Teaching Prize in 2018? Absolutely.
Okay, what do we have here, girls?
The molecule glucose.
The what?
Glucose.
Glucose. How many carbons are in glucose?
6.
6. What story have we just studied where glucose was made?
Photosynthesis.
Photosynthesis. Nice. And can you tell me, I saw your hands moving the atoms. What's actually moving those atoms in the plant cell?
The worker protein.
Oh, you just happen to have one here, eh?
Yep.
So what's this?
Worker protein.
Worker protein. What did the worker protein do?
It breaks bonds and makes bonds to form a new molecule.
Oh, excellent. Okay. So, girls, what would happen next in this story?
The glucose will be shrinked.
Right? So we're going to just change the model from all of the chemistry to the mini glucose? Okay. What's this?
The mitochondria.
Okay, so what's going to happen here?
The glucose will go into the mitochondria.
Right.
And the O2 molecule. So
Okay, and then what's that magic molecule that gets built called?
the energy molecule or the ATP molecule.
Oh. Wow, so we studied all of that. Can you give me one example? You said energy molecule. Can you show me a little bit of maybe how that works? How can we see that there's energy in there?
So you can, for example, it can power the worker protein to do what it does.
So this part is like is that like putting gas in your car kind of thing, right? Make them move, right? Okay. Thank you. Awesome.